We signed the blueprint in pencil. The thing about architecture is that it teaches you to love lines you're supposed to erase. My name is Marcus. I'm a project manager at a small firm that restores old buildings with new money and good intentions. The man I loved was Theo, a food stylist who could make soup look faithful and cakes look like apologies. We lived in a one-bedroom that shook when the train remembered us. We kept our rules on a post-it near the coffee. Be home when you say. Don't edit each other's sentences. Kiss before you turn off the light. We never wrote anything about clients or contractors because we thought professional boundaries were load-bearing. The client for the job that undid me was the Whitfield Hotel, a pile of limestone and myth on the edge of the river. It had survived prohibition, 3 owners, and a scandal involving a senator's nephew. By the time it came to us, it needed everything: plumbing, plaster, a story it could sell to people who believe chandeliers can cure regret. Our firm sent me because I can speak both design and budget without looking like I hate either. Liam was the owner's representative and the first person to hand me a key card that hummed when you pressed it to the service elevator. He had the posture of someone who'd learned manners from an equestrian coach and a smile he'd weaponized gently. He wore wool the way confessionals wear shadows. When we walked the building, he kept touching the banister not to test it but to remember it. "The Whitfield deserves forgiveness," he said, "or at least good lighting." I told him lighting is 90% apology. He laughed like a man relieved to be understood. Our contractor was a company called Halbert and Sons, which made me distrustful immediately because the founder had 2 daughters and a son who left to open a restaurant. The one who stayed, our site superintendent, went by Kane, a name that makes you think of knives and opera. He was the kind of man who lives in denim the way some men live in suits. His hands liked rebar. He called me boss while making decisions that reminded me I was. Theo came to the site the first week with a bag of pastries from a shoot and a kiss that left powdered sugar on my cheek. He's handsome in the way kitchens like: sharp jaw, careful eyes, a posture that forgives splatter. He leaned over scaffolding as if it owed him charm. He shook Liam's hand and said, "You're the one saving the old diva." And Liam said, "I'm just the stagehand," and they smiled in that comfortable way men do when they recognize the other's good haircut. If a building can flirt, the Whitfield did it with staircases. The grand stair had a curve like a secret. The service stair had a window that made winter look rehearsed. The first time I stayed late to mark up the fire egress plan, Liam found me on the 3rd landing beneath a light that had decided to be cinematic. "I brought you coffee," he said, holding out a paper cup like a treaty. I took it. My fingers grazed his in a way that could be dismissed as ergonomics. "You're fixing more than walls," he said. "You're fixing a way for people to behave." My throat did the thing that means you're about to accept credit you don't deserve. "I just make sure the math holds," I said. He looked at my mouth like he didn't believe me. I can tell you the exact day the post-it started to curl. In design meeting 4, Kane cut across the conversation with a line item we couldn't ignore. The ballroom's plaster was rotten beyond patching. "We demo clean or we pretend," he said. The budget preferred pretend. Liam looked at me, and something in his look enrolled me in the truth. I said demo, and Kane nodded like I'd passed a test. Afterward, in the half-lit elevator, Liam touched my elbow to say thank you without making it a debt. My body interpreted the thanks as a map. Theo and I were in a good season, the kind where weekends remember you. He'd shoot a salad that required tweezers and chapstick. I'd bring home samples of tile like a man trying to make color a personality. We cooked with all the windows open because the city wants to feel involved. At night he'd put his mouth on my shoulder and say, "Here," like a prayer, and I'd move his hand lower and say, "Yes," like a polite thunderclap. We didn't talk about open because we didn't need to. We believed our post-it like a fortune we paid for in small change. Kane kissed me first. It was rain's fault and plasters. We were in the ballroom under the tarp that complained like a disappointed ant. A side wall had shed enough of itself to reveal an older layer, hand-painted lilies, a ghost from the hotel's first renovation. I told him we'd have to catalog and salvage. He said, "We'll need hands that know how to be gentle," and he looked at mine and then at me as if he'd located their owner at last. The kiss lasted 4 seconds and an entire decision. His mouth tasted like coffee and weather. My heart did that animal thing where it leans toward an exit it didn't plan. I told Theo because the stupidest lie is the one you tell to the person who knows your rain voice. He set down his knife, wiped his hands, and sat on the kitchen stool like he was preparing a lesson for a student who deserved the truth. "Do you want this to be a mistake we learned from?" he asked. "Or the beginning of architecture as a hobby?" I said mistake. He said, "Then let's be boring with flair." He kissed me slow, as if excellence could be domesticated. Liam's turn came on a night the alarms wouldn't behave. The system was glitching, a false fire that made the building practice panic. We climbed 12 flights to silence the stubborn device because security had gone to dinner in pairs. At the top, breathless and proud of it, we stood next to the siren as it shut up. He smiled like he was proud to exist. "You look good when you're necessary," he said. "You look good when you're grateful," I said. We kissed in a shadow the alarm couldn't find. It wasn't dramatic. It was worse, it fit. I did a stupid, modern thing. I tried to be ethical about my cheating. I told Theo the next morning with coffee and humility. He listened the way he tastes a sauce, first impression, then structure, then aftertaste. "Is this about him?" he asked. "Or about this version of you?" I said both. He nodded like a teacher who wants a better answer but appreciates an honest one. "I love you," he said. "I love us more when you're not auditioning for the ghost of a chandelier." The Whitfield kept me late the way old buildings do when they understand you. I watched workers peel history off walls like careful thieves. I learned to tell the difference between a crack you can live with and one that will shame you in winter. I marked up plans and felt a pride that didn't need applause. Every time I left after midnight, the city had decided to sound like a forgiven secret. Kane wanted my body like it was a tool he respected. He'd pull me into the freight elevator between floors and press his palm to the back of my neck, knowledgeable, quick. We didn't take our clothes off entirely. We had schedules. He was greedy and patient at once, a combination I find hard to refuse. When he came, it was with a breath he bit back, and when I did, it was with my mouth on his shoulder, my hands just shy of clumsy. It was sex in the way scaffolding looks like architecture if you squint. It felt like cheating on work with recess. Liam wanted something softer and more expensive. He took me to a lounge he claimed was historically significant for its chairs. He told me he missed the version of the city where people thought linens were part of morality. When he kissed me outside, it was with a slowness that had passed all inspections. He took my face in his hands, made a map, memorized it. If Kane was an imperative, Liam was a subjunctive. I didn't have room in my grammar for both. I made room anyway. Theo found the second phone, not a burner exactly, just a privacy habit that wanted to feel reasonable. He put it on the counter like a found artifact and asked me if I was finished pretending I knew what I wanted. I said I wanted him. He said, "One is an action, not a sentence." We argued in low voices because the radiator has always been a gossip. We slept back to back, and I counted the number of times his breathing changed. Intrigue likes logistics. It pretends to be calendars. That week, Liam asked me to walk the facade with a historian who knew which pieces of stone had earned their scars. Kane texted me to come see the mock-up for the restored crown molding, a miracle done with polymers and nerve. Thea sent a photo from set, a roast smirking under a sheen of something edible and obscene. I kept my replies polite. That evening I went home early because early felt like a virtue I could afford. Theo was on the couch with a notebook, reworking a shot list. He looked up and patted the cushion. The grin he gave me was full of bite. "Come here," he said, and he meant, "choose a future you can stand to repeat." We kissed and then some, the kind of sex that respects neighbors and still ruins you for sleep. The scandal didn't arrive with a bang. It came as an invoice. Halbert and Sons billed for overtime that didn't exist, scaffolding that hadn't kissed the building, materials that were suspiciously aspirational. Liam called a meeting. Kane brought a folder that believed in paperwork. I brought the righteous tone of a man whose email is a weapon. We argued politely for 2 hours and then not politely for another 30 minutes. When it ended, the work paused and so did my pretending. Kane cornered me on the stair under the painted lilies and said, "You think I stole time?" I said, "I think you counted hours as if desire were labor." He laughed once, mean enough to feel true. "I wanted you and the job," he said. "You wanted me because of the job." He wasn't wrong. We ended there because endings prefer altitude. He went down, I went up. I didn't text him. He didn't text me. The silence behaved like expensive stone, cool, convincing. Liam didn't end with a conversation. He ended with a look across a folding table covered in red-lined PDFs. It was small and it was clean and it said, "I like you and I like my reputation more." We stayed colleagues. He sent emails with brave subject lines. He stood far enough away that we could nod without revisiting any shadows. I respected him more, which felt like a punishment. Theo and I did the thing couples do when the script pretends to run out. We rewrote it like amateurs with good taste. We went to a cheap motel on the highway and pretended to be people who had to decide whether to risk the next morning. We talked about our first year together like we'd found a way to preserve it in amber. We kissed in mirrors and decided we still liked the angles. We came home to our noisy train and our arrogant radiator and the post-it, which had curled at the edges like a secret you decide to keep and stop apologizing for. The Whitfield opened a month late and better for it. The lilies were framed and lit with a reverence that made architects bearable. The ballroom made people like themselves. My name went in small print on a program no one keeps. Kane's company survived the audit but lost our future bids. Liam shook my hand without touching the part of my wrist that makes promises. We stood under the chandelier while donors tried to outsmile their daughters. "We did okay," he said. "We did honest," I said. He nodded, "Same sentence if you're lucky." Then he moved on, which is its own wisdom. At the opening, Theo wore a suit that had learned to behave. He took my arm like we were not rehearsing saving anything. He listened to the string quartet and then leaned into my ear and said, "The room forgives." The way men say I'm proud of you when they also mean I'll be here if you mess up again. We went home early and made love like quiet people, which is my favorite genre. Sometimes I walk past the Whitfield at night and it looks like a person trying not to show off. I run my hand along the stone the way Liam used to and I imagine Kane somewhere, teaching a new sight to say yes. I go upstairs to the apartment that forgives us and put my mouth to Theo's shoulder and say, "Here." And he moves his hand lower and says, "Yes." And we are boring with flair. When friends ask how we got through the season of bad grammar, I tell them the truth. I learned to love the lines you erase. Not because the mistake was beautiful, it wasn't, but because the erasing taught me what needed to stay. The post-it still lives near the coffee. We added nothing to it. We sign our blueprints in pencil now, not because we plan to betray them, but because mercy is easier to read when you know you can revise.